Hello, everyone. Thank you so much again for subscribing to the Patreon. And this is the last video of the year for the Patreon. So again, thank you. Or at least I'm pretty sure I can pull up the calendar here real quick. So yeah, if we do another Patreon video, it'll be the 1st or the 4th of the year. I know we'll be doing another Patreon video. So I have something for you guys on January 4th. But today we'll be doing an article reading. And that article reading is something that I know early on I was just kind of randomly picking articles, but the reason I want to choose today's article is because it has some relevance with something that happened recently. So if you didn't see on the main podcast, I had mentioned the fact that I play tested a game called Blue: Legend of Water. And I play tested it for Hilltop, which is the like fan translation group kind of thing that he does. So it was fun. I mean, more or less, I just played the video game per usual. But one thing I had noticed about this game, Blue: Legend of Water, and I need to go back and look at my original stream and see if I brought this up. But like the character art for Blue looked super familiar. And it took me a little while, but I put my finger on it, I was like, oh, it feels kind of like a Cing game. If you don't know what Cing is, that's the company that made games like Trace Memory or Another Code if you're in regions outside the US. Hotel Dusk, The Last Window. Those are kind of the big Nintendo ones that people like. And then also there's like Again on DS and Glass Rose on PS2. But Another Code / Trace Memory and Hotel Dusk are definitely kind of the big ones. Little King Story is another one, but that's a very different game for them in a lot of ways. So yeah, and so it just kind of jumped out at me, and sure enough, when doing a little bit of research after I beat the game, found out that the dude who did the Blue character portraits was the dude who did the character art for Cing, and I believe, if I recall correctly, I'd have to go back and look, but I think he became like the lead game designer on Cing games by the end of the company's life, I believe. So yeah, it was kind of fun, and there's a little Twitter exchange kind of thing. I maybe a little too like bullish. Maybe is bullish the right word? I don't know. On like, maybe not too is the right word, because I do get some fun conversations sometimes. But I reached out to the artist, and we had a very brief back and forth. And then also I posted up some pictures of the art online, and so he seemed pretty excited about that. And then Hilltop got in contact with him and showed him some other art that he had. That was really cool. And it's been kind of weird because like he's followed me on Twitter for a very long time, and Twitter has its algorithm and everything. So he engaged with me recently on Twitter because of all that Blue stuff, right? And then now he's like liking other posts that I did. And so it's like, I've been into this pachinko game called like Winter Sonata or something like that. And like, he was liking my Winter Sonata posts. And I'm like, all right, dude. But yeah, it's a fun little thing. Anyways, all that aside though, it made me think a little bit about Cing and the fact that, I haven't talked about Cing in a very long time. I mean, the reality is I haven't played a Cing game in a very long time. I picked up Glass Rose on PS2, but have yet to play it. I think we briefly touched on it. I don't remember if we did it on stream or maybe it was like a pickup video that I touched on it, but I do want to play through that at some point. And I believe at one point I was going to plan on it being a stream game. I'm always worried about like puzzle games on stream and things like that. So anyways, but as you can see on screen here, I have this article that I wrote, actually, I think it's like 2014. Yeah, February 1st, 2014. And I'm just now realizing that I actually don't want to be on my page. I want to be on this page, because this is another one of those articles, just like the Animal Crossing one, where VentureBeat actually gave the article a professional edit and they published it, but because of how their backend was updated over time, it ended up becoming a part of their community section, so it's not in the same section as it was before. But this was an article that was published on VentureBeat, and they gave me a professional edit here, so let me just recenter this real quick. So I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this setup on this particular, like we were using the green screen before. I might still be in favor of the green screen setup for this, so in the future we might return back to the green screen, but I want to see how this would work out. And the nice thing about this is that you can see when I'm looking at the camera and talking to you versus just like staring at you all the time while I'm reading the article. And geez, can I please open the right windows? There we go. So anyways, So we're gonna look at this article, and I know you can't see it, but it's from February 4th, 2014 is when they published it. I think I published it a few days earlier. They had a bad tendency to not get back to you anytime soon, so at some point I would just publish it out and see what would happen. But anyways, like I said, it got a professional edit, and it technically was published, but again, it's because of how I submitted it through the community section and then bringing it up, it is now listed as like a community post where they don't necessarily, it has not been edited by the GameSpeed staff. It was edited by the GameSpeed staff. So anyways, that being said, let's go ahead and give this a read. I think this is right after I finished the last story. And I think in some ways this is me kind of saying why I thought Cing died from my memory. I have not reread this article since we last, or since I last wrote it probably. So maybe we'll be surprised, but what I say here. It's been almost 4 years since Cing went out of business. It's creator of... You may know it as the creator of Wii's Little King story. It's really funny that... Okay, we're getting a little bonus bit here. Bonus bit. So, like I said, they edited the story. So, I'm curious, did I mention Little King story in here? No, I didn't. Interesting. So they thought Little King's story was more important than Trace Memory in Hotel Dusk. And they're like, oh, you might know it from Little King's story. And I feel like Little King's story is less known than Trace Memory in Another Code R, but I could be wrong. Anyways, in over a decade of its existence, the Japanese developer created multiple point-and-click adventure games, a genre that is now rising in popularity for Nintendo's platforms. I recently realized that I was more, and it's kind of I guess I phrased that weird, but like a genre that is now rising in popularity, pause, for Nintendo's platforms. So not necessarily saying it's a genre rising popularity for Nintendo's platforms. Although it did get kind of popular. I feel like after this, the Vita was kind of the place this kind of stuff thrived on a little bit more though. I recently realized that I was a bit more disappointed than I should be about Cing's closure. Being a fan of Hotel Dusk Room 215 for the Nintendo DS, I was sad to see the developer go as it finished work on the sequel, Last Window, The Secret of Cape West, which only released in Europe and Japan. I imported Last Window years ago, but have saved it for when it felt right to dive in. I finally sat down and completed it in a couple of flights over the holidays. Wonder where I was traveling, probably just to my dad's place. It's just kind of like a weird opening. I feel like it's just kind of like, hey, developer exists, confirmed. There's not a lot of information of like what this article's going to be yet. It's just like, did you know about these guys? Obviously, the closure was a shame for those who lost their jobs, and I hope by this point they've all found some form of employment. The artist now works at Arc System, I believe. But as much as I enjoyed Last Window, the title did little to broaden the developer's horizons. Here comes Ben doing that thing where he's like, they need to be more ambitious. Cing's DS and Wii experiences always stood out thanks to their novel use of Nintendo systems and their features. They often required you to think outside of the game's boundaries. For example, one puzzle in their Wii title, Another Code R, A Journey into Lost Memories, also only for Europe and Japan, requires you to open the Wii's home menu to reveal the solution. It's a refreshing and sometimes frustrating experience as it requires you to mentally break the fourth wall, often on your own. After finishing Last Window, a thought crossed my mind. I could go without playing another title like this, at least anytime soon. Cing's games didn't evolve after its second release for Nintendo, Hotel Dusk. Sure, the novelty puzzles continued to be unique to the developer, but they were expected feature by the fourth title. I might have some comments on this article after we're done with this, Ben. Ben, grading you almost 10 years after the fact. Comparing Cing's earlier DS games, Trace Memory, aka Another Code, Two Memories, and Hotel Dusk, I think Two Memories is the DS game. Yeah, I just mentioned the DS game. It's easy to see that there are some improvements and changes between each release. Hotel Dusk streamlines puzzle elements and the user interface as well gives the players a more natural view of their surroundings, though through a first-person perspective, whereas Trace Memory had been isometric. The tone changed significantly between them. Both are point-and-click adventure games, focusing on complicated mysteries, but Trace Memory is viewed through the eyes of a young girl trying to find her father. Hotel Dusk unfolds from the perspective of a seasoned detective and often deals with more mature and complicated themes. Cing's following title, Another Code R, revisited Trace Memory and felt like a step back, often undermining the player's intelligence with hand-holding and dialogue that assumes you have an attention span of less than 5 minutes. Thankfully, this was an issue unique to this entry. This is absolutely true. As much as I enjoyed the idea of Another Code R, that game does not know how to let you go. Like, it will reiterate story points nonstop. And it will not, like, I don't know. I think there's something to be said about a game being kind of straightforward, right? And just telling you the story points. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just like, that's not the point of the game, is to like have you really sit here and like think about, you know, where the story's going and making your own connection. It's just like, we're going to tell you what's happening and you're just going to listen. But I think requiring the player to listen to the character re-explain the same information like 5 times over is always just like really, really frustrating. It's just like, it felt like they were anticipating that you would put the game down, leave, and come back over and over and over and over again. And so if you played for any longer than like 10, 15 minutes, you would be reintroduced plot points, even though you were already like currently engaged in those plot points. Instead of building off its past successes after stumbling, Cing simply returned to the Hotel Dusk formula. Sure, Last Window had a new story and new characters, but the actual game shell containing it and the story themes remained unchanged. It's hard to fully blame Cing. It worked under short development periods. Its games released only a year or two apart at most. The team obviously didn't have the room to take risks, or at least that's what I assume, as Cing went bankrupt soon after the release of Last Window. It wouldn't be surprising if the game was simply an attempt to stay afloat, hence its safe nature. I love the story, themes, dialogue, and characters of Cing's titles. I'd have a total man crush on Kyle Hyde from Hotel Dusk and Last Window if he were real. I'm actually curious where the developer went following Cing's bankruptcy. I haven't gone searching for them yet, and I'm not sure if any of them are high profile enough to be tracked. Like I said, one went to Arc System Works. I haven't looked into many of the people at the company, though. And there has been a renaissance in point-and-click adventure genres in recent years. Most of the newer titles seem to be based off Western-developed releases of the past, but I do hope someone takes the time to look at Cing's work and build off the foundation it has set. Let me just eye up my other article here real quick. I feel like this article, I'm surprised they picked this article. This seems really disjointed and just like, hey, did you know Cing made video games? Here's the things they did. I wish they did them differently. Like, I feel like that's all I really got out of there. I don't know what, is there a comment section here? No. Yeah, I don't know what to think of this article. It's obviously doing a couple things. One, it's highlighting what makes them unique. 2, it's highlighting the flaws in their games. And then 3, it's saying, I wish they did more, but also they kind of returned to the bucket a little too often. I didn't mention like Again or Little King's Story ever again. I think it was probably worth mentioning those after I criticized them for not deviating from what worked, basically. Like, I don't really know what I was thinking with this article. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of want to go back and read the other one that was like my raw writing, but at the same time, just like skimming it here. I know you guys can't see the entire thing, but like just skimming it, I don't think it changed too much. I did say I'd marry Kyle Hyde though if he were real. That's the one difference that really caught my eye. But yeah, I don't feel like I really had anything to say about this. But let me say about like this what I think about Cing like now. Obviously, it's been a long time since I've played those games, so like my experience with Cing games have not changed since this article. But I think for me, like I said in this, I think what defines a Cing puzzle game in a lot of ways, and maybe not defines it. One of the biggest gimmicks of Cing's puzzle games is working with the hardware to make interesting, unique puzzles. I would not say that's something that would necessarily be required for their games. As I mentioned, I think story and characters are a huge part of their games, and that's probably the most important part, and probably the thing that makes them stand apart first and foremost. But the maybe just like the length of time the DS and the Wii were around, like they couldn't really do that much more with it. I guess another code swap platforms, but I remember last window in particular being a DS game going to yet another DS game. It kind of felt like all the things in the game that you did were pretty much in line with what you've did in another code already, Trace Memory on the DS, and Hotel Dusk. So I think maybe that's really kind of where I'm getting at there, where like things were not changing that much. This is a third DS game, fourth if you count again, actually. They may have worked on more, but those are like kind of the big ones I can think of. Yeah, and I wonder if that was like my really big issue kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. This article feels like all over the place, unfortunately. I don't really think it was saying all that much beyond these guys existed. Not a great article, in my opinion. Maybe one of the worst ones, I feel like, so far, because I feel like there wasn't a lot of interesting information in here either. I don't think I really got that much out of my previous point of view. I think the one thing that I maybe got out of this was just, I don't think I was at the point where I was like good enough at explaining what I like out of games at this point. This is, I think, not too long after I did a Resident Evil 6 video. And I haven't looked at that Resident Evil 6 video in a long time, but one of my friends commented on that video. Not on the actual comment section, he just messaged me. And he was like, you spent like, I forget, it was like 15 to 20 minutes. He's like, and you basically said nothing. And I went back and watched that video, and I was like, you're right. I spent like 15 to 20 minutes basically saying nothing about that video game. I kind of, more or less parroted the things that most people were saying about the game, and I generally agreed with them, and you could kind of take that what you will out of it. But I didn't really have a defined opinion on what the game was beyond, this is what the game tries to do and what it fails to do. And I guess I didn't really even though I liked the game later, I don't think I ever really highlighted what it did well at all. And I think that's something that I've really gotten a lot better at, is highlighting what games do well. Even if it's the rest of this game is a nightmare, I can highlight what a game does well and really focus on that and kind of expand what that idea is to the experience as a whole versus, just really only focusing on the sum of all the parts of a game, like breaking it down and having individual sections, I think is something that's helped out. So anyways, I can't say I love this article. I'm a little sad this is the last thing I wrote about Cing. Because, this is not something that I would really recommend anybody read either. It just feels so all over the place, and I don't really feel like I said anything. I think in the future, I would like to do a Hotel Dusk video, maybe at some point. And revisiting Hotel Dusk, what did I revisit it for? The Buddy Mission Bond video. So I did play Hotel Dusk since then. I'm a liar. I'm sorry. I did play Hotel Dusk since then. Buddy Mission Bond, though, I played about maybe an hour or two of Hotel Dusk. And what really, I think it came back down to was just how personal those conversations feel in some ways. And the relationships that Hyde builds with the people in that building, while often very standoffish and kind of a step back from, he's not their friend or anything like that. I think it creates a lot of really interesting dynamics between characters, and it really highlights the little moments that they make connections with one another, kind of thing. And thinking about it, let me see. Is there a way I can recenter this for you guys? I think I did actually write. I'm lying all the time right now. Sorry, I'm just a serial liar at the moment. I believe I may have wrote something about Hotel Dusk at some point. Let me see. So I think the reason why I didn't think about this was I believe this is from when I was doing video gaming bits on Tumblr, which was when I was basically the emotional toll of Hotel Dusk 2. Let me see how long this is. Maybe we'll give this a little read too. This is pretty short. We'll give this a read too, actually, real quick, because I think this is maybe, I remember this being a little more of a better description. So I actually would take pictures of all my games and post them up. So that was kind of a fun thing. Although I had these little like hooks that got in the way of the box art or whatever. So I do still have this box actually. Maybe I should utilize it sometime, but not right. Let's not think about that. I don't want to think about trying to set up a camera and all that garbage anyways. So, yeah, we're going to give this article a read. Bonus article rating within this article. I just was so upset at that Cing article not being great that I'm going to hope this is going to be salvageable. But like I said, this is from the Video Game Bit series. This was daily article writing, so the quality of these is probably not as edited and defined. This is, let me see what the date was this. 2016, so this would have been 2-ish years afterwards for that, so. And the article, what was it called again? The Emotional Toll of Hotel Dusk Room 215. What a name. For myself, characters are the most important element of a story. Bad narratives can have great casts, but you can't have good stories without at least decent characters. That is, I say you can't, like, definitively. That's my opinion. I know some people feel differently, so but at this time I probably would have said that definitively because I was an asshole. Hotel Dusk Room 215 goes far beyond decent personalities. It not only features a likable cast, but you also have have complex interactions with them. The player is a detective. While you have to build relationships with other residents of the hotel, you also have to pursue your own interests. Sometimes you do this by deceiving, lying, and working behind their back, while also befriending them to gain their trust. I think that's a key part of this because I think this article defines, I think this is what the entire article is about, honestly, so I should just probably read it. It's a fine line to walk, and in some ways, it's a fair exchange. Most of them have a motive or a personal history they're trying to hide. It can be simply to protect their image or because they have a greater aim. One of Hotel Dusk's most impactful moments for me was a bad ending, where you're exploring a floor of the hotel that's off limits. It's possible to get caught by the hotel's owner. I think his name's like Douglas or Dunaway or something like that. I don't remember. He never really got along with the main character in the first place. Both are stubborn old men who often butt heads with each other. Yet there's still a relation and friendship built between them from their small talk, and maybe more than they'd both like to admit. As with every other character you deal with, you're walking on thin ice. When you're caught, he basically yells at you to get out of the hotel. It sounds like a typical fail state, but I came away with the feeling that he was disappointed in me as a person. I put a lot of emotional investment into him at that point, and it felt like I betrayed him. It's been almost a decade since I played Hotel Dusk, but that moment and feeling has remained clear in my mind. Yeah, that's the thing I was actually thinking about earlier, but it's a weird thing to talk about because it is like a very weirdly like specific scene, and I feel like the only reason you feel that way from that scene is just that you have this connection with this character, and like I think this is true actually for Blue as well in some ways, even though I don't think he worked on the story or anything like that, but like a lot of the characters, it feels like they kind of have an individual hook for each character, and like Hyde kind of like grabs onto that hook. And it's like a nice like touch point for them kind of thing, right? I guess it's like similar to like these two very different people who maybe bond over like a particular hobby or something, right? And so they have these immensely different backgrounds, but they also have like an immense, respect for one another because of the things that they do otherwise that relate to the thing that they can relate to kind of thing. And I feel like Kyle Hyde is really good at making those connections with people where he may not be their friend, but he can sit down and like, have a chat with them and like have a good time. He could probably sit by anybody in a bar and just like chat, basically, I feel like is maybe the thing. Would he want to do that in the first place is a whole other thing. Like Kyle Hyde is a person, not exactly the most friendly fellow, but when he needs to talk to somebody, he can grab onto that hook, and I think he's really good at grabbing onto that hook. And obviously within the game, he kind of uses it to his own advantage, but I do think he does build genuine relationships with characters and things like that down the line. So anyways, I am much more happier with this write-up. So I'm glad I took the time to read that because that original Cing article, this is good. It focuses on one particular thing. It focuses on one particular good thing about this game. And, while this doesn't necessarily reflect the game as a whole, I think this is something that shows when the game is shining its brightest in a lot of ways. And I honestly, I kind of like doing that. I feel like I like to show games when they're shining their brightest most of the time, because I think those are the most memorable moments for a lot of games for a lot of us. So anyways, yeah, I'm glad I got to do that. Thank you so much for supporting me throughout this year on Patreon. I appreciate it. We'll be back next year, probably again with some more article readings and commentaries on videos. Kaminaza, we'll get back to Kaminaza. I know I said I want to finish Kaminaza before the end of the year. We didn't get there. I'm sorry, but we'll get there. I want to finish Kaminaza sooner rather than later. So that is on the docket of video games that will need to be finished, and I will do some streaming for that. I have some other ideas for some like other kind of ongoing Patreon series, maybe. Now that I'm kind of rolling some content back from the YouTube channel going forward, I think some of that will end up becoming Patreon content specifically. I think I want to create a bigger dividing line between what's Patreon content and what's the YouTube content. And as YouTube trying to transforms, I think some of those things may get wrapped back into the Patreon for certain things. So, yeah, again, if you guys want anything in specific or have any thoughts about what you'd be interested in hearing about, let me know. I personally like these article readings a lot, though, so I think it's good to like be critical of myself and then also be able to praise myself, right? We had the good and the bad side of Ben writing here today, so anyways, thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a great. By the time you're hearing this, it's gonna be right before Christmas, so have a great holiday season and enjoy yourself, and I'll see you in the new year.